The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great.
Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
All right, everybody. Good morning. Welcome in. Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, and Jacob Tissett with you here. I hope everyone so far has having their day off to a great start. How's everyone doing over in the Hamilton studio? You doing good, Elliot? I saw a smile on your face right off the bat. You got that badass Kansas hoodie on. You're rocking to start the day. How we feeling?
I feel great. Listen, I woke up to a lot of snow this morning. I didn't know if it snowed, and I found out, so I had to, wipe off the little windshield there. But I love a good snow. I love a good snow that doesn't impact the roads. That's what I like.
Was this your first snow drive where you knew for 100% certainty your car was going to have heat?
Yeah, maybe. First time in a long time.
That had to have felt good.
In years, almost.
You might not even realized it, but that had to have felt good this morning.
I'll tell you what, it did feel really good, and it makes me count my blessings because the whole last winter I had to drive into this office in 3-degree weather.
3-degree weather, huh?
3-degree weather.
It was a record cold winter last year.
It also got colder in my car. It was colder in my car than it was outside. Because the air that would blow in was cold air.
How long have you had the new car?
A month.
Oh, so this is a perfect time to test it out. I got my new truck earlier in the year, and I've been without it for like 3 weeks now, since Thanksgiving.
Oh, no.
The whole wheel fell off. So I have this little rental.
Sorry?
Yeah, the whole wheel fell off.
The wheel fell off?
The day of Thanksgiving, yep. I'm not throwing anyone under the bus.
Oh, boy.
But there was somebody that...
You got to keep your wheels on.
The wheels have to be on the car.
The wheels are falling off. Literally, there was a simple tire rotation that was done, wasn't done correctly. Kinner might own a garage here soon, to be determined. Attorneys are figuring that stuff out. Yeah.
Live off the bench from Kinner's garage?
I mean, my goodness. So we might get some upgrades at that studio over there, with all the money and the cash flow coming in. But no, I'm without my truck right now. I miss my truck. I really do. But, it doesn't matter. I hope everyone's had a good day.
You don't look like a truck guy.
I'm not. My wife really wanted the truck. And it's not that I didn't want the truck either. But, guys, I'm short. I'm like 5'7" on a good day. And there is nothing more embarrassing than having to, hold on to, the handle and pull myself up. There is nothing cool about that at all. There's nothing cool when I park the truck and open the door and I have to, make sure I brace for landing because I'm jumping to my death.
You kind of roll out.
Yeah. There's nothing cool about it at all, but it's a cool truck.
It is a cool truck. I'll co-sign that. It is a cool truck.
You seem like a Kia Soul guy.
A big-time Kia Soul guy. Right now, what was the rental? I can't remember the rental car they gave me. I'm not impressed with it, but I don't have to pay for it, so it's fine. And it gets the job done. It gets me to work and back.
Good.
Wheels do not fall off this one. Knock on wood.
We'll see what you can do with it.
Yep. Casey, how are you? Good morning, sir.
Good morning. I'm good. My wheels are secure on my car.
And it's in the parking lot outside.
Yeah. It's been there for about a couple months.
I think 4 months.
Yeah. We're going to take care of that this week, though.
This is the third week we're going to take care of it this week?
Yeah.
All right.
Something like that. Yeah.
We're going to take care of it.
We're all dealing with some car issues, but I'm very happy for Elliot.
Thank you.
I'm very happy.
Yeah.
You have complained about that other car for so long. You deserve that. You deserve this nice new car that you can finally relax and enjoy the AC and enjoy the heat. Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah, it's a great day to own a Toyota Corolla.
That's right.
All right, well, excited for the show today.
Do we have the new headline sounder yet?
No. I was dreading this segment.
Then what's the point of doing it? What's the point of even doing this? It's like
Well, if
Kinner says 6 weeks ago we're interviewing Molinaro. Then this week we're last week we said, oh, we got a new sounder. We're doing the new sounder. Nothing ever happens. Kinner, I want my sounder. I want the Kendrick Lamar or whatever the hell sounder that was, and I want it today.
I got nothing. If I could do my own imaging, it
Where's
would be done.
Molinaro?
I don't know how to do my own imaging. I don't know how to do my own imaging.
Elliot's headlines.
Well, hold on. I mean, we're gonna talk. We're gonna talk draft in a little bit.
There we go.
That was good. That was good. That was good.
I also don't know. In Casey, you could tell me if I'm wrong, but this is, we're allowed to use this music. At least we are on our YouTube channel. So I'm assuming we're allowed to use this. But at least it won't be so quiet in the background. So right now, the music is hit. We got a little beat in the background, in the backdrop. So go ahead, Elliot's headlines until we get the new sounder back. 2025. That's my New Year's resolution, is to get Elliot his sounder.
We'll see in 2020. We'll see in 2026.
I'll show you. We'll get it done.
Is that it?
What's wrong?
He's playing the music. We just can't hear it.
I can hear it.
You can?
Yeah. What about now? What about now? Elliot's headlines, ladies and gentlemen. Elliot's headlines.
He loves three things: Joey Votto and something else. College basketball from last night. Xavier had their biggest win in terms of margin of defeat in program history, 119-58, a slaughtering. It was the most points ever scored at Cintas Center. I was there. Some are saying I was the reason Xavier performed so well last night. 119-58. I've never seen a team coast so easily than Xavier last night. They were running half speed, and they were just walking in layups. It was the easiest win maybe in the history of basketball. Morgan State, that program should be dismantled, but good for Xavier, I guess. They get an easy win heading into the crosstown shootout. Zach
Elliot,
Freeman.
didn't you go see UCF when you were on vacation?
I did go see UCF, yeah.
Very nice. Very
They
nice.
look
And if you were not done with
They look terrible. Tarleton State should have
did?
won that game.
Ooh, big Carleton State fan. Never heard of Carleton State.
Carleton State doesn't
That's
exist,
because
maybe?
it's Tarleton State.
That's right.
I've never heard of Carleton State either. But thank you.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, But
Yeah,
continue. I'm done interrupting. I'm just gonna. There we go. Just that way you can't hear me.
Thank you. Thank you. Zach Freemantle dropped 27 points in a double-double with 4 assists as well. I imagine if he would have kept playing, he could have gotten a couple more there. Marcus Foster dropped 18 points. Ryan Conwell added 15 of his own. Arkansas, they held on to beat 14th-ranked Michigan 89-87. I watched the end of that one. Michigan had, I want to say, 5 different chances in the final minute to tie it. Just couldn't get the job done. Cal's Arkansas, the Razorbacks get the job done against Michigan. 20th-ranked Wisconsin, they lost on the road to Illinois 86-80. Incarnate Word, ever hear of the Incarnate Word? Well, they kept it close in the first half to Duke. They were down 28-21 in the first half, but then they got their doors blown off. Duke ran away with it 72-46. Number 1, Tennessee. This is just how much I've paid attention to college basketball. Had no idea Tennessee was ranked number 1 in the country.
Good.
Tennessee glides by Miami 75-62. 75-62.
The SEC is just unbelievable this year
very good.
in basketball. They have a current combined overall record of 128-19.
It's pretty good. That's pretty good. NBA, the Thunder beat the Mavericks 118-104 in the NBA Cup quarterfinals. SGA dropped 39 points on 15 of 23 shooting. Pretty unbelievable. The Bucks, they take care of the Magic in their quarterfinal, 114-109. Giannis and Lillard combined for 65 of their 114 points. 65 of their 114 points.
That duo has just not worked out the way I expected it to.
No.
I know just combining stars doesn't always work, but I thought Damian Lillard and Giannis was going to be championships on championships, and they've gotten worse since they added Lillard.
Yeah, they have.
I thought they complemented each other perfectly. I was
Yeah.
actually, I've always thought, Dame he complains about being underrated, and I'm like, well, you continue to stay with a team that you're not going to be able to accomplish what you want. So, I know there's we criticize athletes for going to pair up with other stars, but if you want to get your ring, that's what you have to do if you're some superstars in the NBA. I had no problem with him going to push his way to go team up with Giannis. I thought that was going to be a dynamic duo. I just thought their games complemented each other perfectly. I don't know. I'm surprised that has not worked out the way it has. I know they came away with the win last night, but man, they've been very inconsistent since they've been paired up from the beginning.
MLB news. Max Fried, a New York Yankee, 8 years, $218 million. So the Yankees, now that they don't get Juan Soto, they're just going to get 5 other superstars, which begs the question, would you rather have 5 elite superstars or would you rather have 1 elite superstar? I don't know. It's up to you. But if I were the Yankees, I think I'm perfectly happy in the situation that I'm in, just because they can get whatever they want now. So
My friends that are Yankees fans, a couple of my roommates in college are from New York, big Yankees fans, and as soon as they lost Juan Soto, they were pretty upset for a couple hours. Obviously, you lose out on a guy like Juan Soto, you're going to be pretty upset, especially if you're a Yankees fan.
Sure.
You expect to get everyone you ever won. But immediately, I think all Yankees fans kind of turn their attention to, we're better because we're still going to spend that $700 million. Yeah. We're just going to spend it on 4 different guys. I mean, look at their rotation right now. I would fully expect one of those guys in their rotation to be moved. They've been linked to Kyle Tucker. And if you connect the dots there and you put Kyle Tucker in the outfield, how much worse than Juan Soto is he really? And then you add a Max Fried and a couple other players as well. I think losing out on Soto could be an overall win for the Yankees for sure.
Yep. And moving on, we have the Texas Rangers. A couple moves yesterday. Eovaldi returns to the Rangers on a 3-year deal worth $75 million, and they traded Jake Berger. They traded to get Jake Berger from the Miami Marlins, gave away 2 shortstop prospects and a young pitcher. Those are your sports headlines.
One more headline came out while you were reading those. Ohio State Representative Josh Williams has introduced the Ohio Sportsmanship Act. This act would make it a felony to plant a flag in the middle of Ohio Stadium.
What?
Yeah, it's the softest thing I've ever heard in my entire life. They're taking legal action about getting their butt kicked against Michigan 4 years in a row. That's the softest thing I've ever heard. Kinner, as another Buckeye fan, that can't be good for anyone, right?
What are they like?
Yeah,
I'd like to know where Lou Holtz is right now because I'd love to hear his opinion about how soft of a thing that is. I just don't get it. I don't understand why. Like, again, the rivalry, get it, but like context matters and reading the room matters. This is why, like, Ohio State. I'm a Buckeye fan. Jake's a Buckeye fan, but I think we all have acknowledged why we know Buckeye fans are the most obnoxious in college football. It's the pettiness. It's this type of stuff. When Alabama kind of fades off, they're pissed off and they're mad at their team, but they quiet down. I don't hear Alabama fans chirp. They missed the playoff. I'm not hearing them chirp. I know Ohio State's in the playoff, but they should be focused about Tennessee. They should be annoyed that a player called out their atmosphere, which he's not wrong, by the way. We'll get to that later, maybe. Maybe Jake and I won't agree on that. But, like, this stuff just makes the program look bad. I know they didn't do this, but it's just no one's helping their cause by any means. They're soft until proven otherwise.
You're absolutely right. We didn't do headlines on Monday because you weren't here, and then Tuesday was a Bengals recap show. So a couple of things from over the weekend I wanted to touch on as well. Yep. Charles Huff, the head coach of Marshall. Interesting just series of events here. He leads Marshall to a championship, a conference championship this year. Yeah. One of their best seasons in the history of the program. They don't extend him. His contract expires, and they don't offer him any kind of extension. He just took the job as Southern Miss's head coach. That means he went from the conference champion to the worst team in the conference in the next year. I can't think of that ever happening in sports before. I can't wrap my head around why Marshall would move off of Charles Huff. He was the running backs coach in 2020 at Alabama, a really, really great guy, a really good football coach that turned around that program pretty quickly. And for them to just let him walk, just to think the grass is greener, I believe they hired the defensive coordinator from Virginia Tech. I just don't understand that move at all. And Southern Miss, what a get to get the conference champion head coach in your conference to come to your school after a 1-11 season. Kudos to them for making the jump there, but just an unbelievable series of events for Marshall not to bring a coach like that back.
Yeah, there's so many moving pieces in college athletics right now, and it's like, how do you just let, for one, a successful head coach just walk right out of your building, but like you said, Jake, to also just go to the last place that's, I mean, you chose to do that though. He chose to go there, right? That's the wild thing. Nonetheless, speaking of that, still no word on Bill Belichick, right? No. Still no decision.
No word on Bill Belichick. But while again I was reading this, we have some more breaking news.
Ooh.
Casey, I sent this in our Twitter group chat. It looks like the Bearcats will be donning a new jersey, or at least a throwback, in the Crosstown Shootout.
They'll be wearing
For
these in the shootout?
I believe so.
Wow.
I believe.
Please be
How do you
old
feel
school.
about that?
Old school. Please,
I-
please.
They look pretty sick. If I want to be completely
They
honest,
are really cool, but something about a rivalry game, I think everyone should always wear classic.
I agree with that. I agree. It should always usually be red versus blue.
Xavier
but
kind of threw that away years ago, though.
yeah, I love these jerseys. So we're going to show the jerseys here in a second. There's a little video that goes with it. I don't even know if you want to even play the video, but towards the end of the video is when you see it. But the jerseys look pretty sick.
They're really cool.
The jerseys look sick. That's
really
all,
cool.
that's-
A new old mix, I guess.
Yeah.
The same Jordan, obviously, coming back and being the UC jerseys now. And then was that elephant, right? Elephant print?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, those are really, really cool. Really cool jerseys. UC does a good job with the alternates. They really always have.
Oh yeah, I'm very excited. I'm very, very excited to see these, what they look like. You remember the old March Madness where every team wore the zebra stripes?
Yeah. That was terrible.
They should bring that back.
No. And they were all neon, and some of them had sleeves.
Oh, it was so good.
Yeah, that was.
They need to bring that back.
Quite an era. Speaking of eras, I just wanted to touch on this because I thought it was funny. That was a killer segue. The Eras Tour ended on Monday. Taylor Swift's Eras Tour.
Okay, I like where this is going.
The first night of the Eras Tour, the opening show. Do you
Sure.
know when that was by any chance? It coincided with a major sporting event.
The first night. Of
Reminder,
the Eras
it
Tour.
ended on Monday, 2 days ago.
The first night of the Eras Tour.
It was when Farley Dickinson knocked off Purdue.
Really?
Oh, wow.
That is a long tour.
Wait, that wasn't even. Was that this last?
No.
Tournament? That was the tournament before.
Yes.
Oh my God.
I just thought that was unbelievable. That was the length of this tour. So, round of applause, T Swift, for banging out a 2+ year tour.
Unreal. Made $1 billion.
Was she even dating Kelsey at that time?
No.
Like a lot's changed.
Yeah.
Since from the start of the Eras Tour. But there you go. Wow, look at us, Swifties.
How about that?
There you go.
How about that?
Swifty talk to close out this part of the show. All right, Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Rearing, Jacob Tissett with you here. Jacob, I was trying to find it. You talked about UC's jerseys, and you said, the traditional jerseys should be, in a rivalry game, use that. Ohio State, Tennessee, did you see what Ohio State's going to be wearing? And I absolutely hate these jerseys, the red out. I can't find the tweet. I was looking for it to send Casey. Do you have access to it by any chance? How do you feel about the scarlet out, the all red jerseys for Ohio State?
I do have the picture. I'll work on sending it to Casey right now, but I really like it. I like the scarlet out. I like doing the whole stadium in one color. I think that's good. This is my least favorite of their Color Rush uniforms. I like the black and I like the gray a lot better than the red, but I think it's important for them to wear the playoff sleeves. I think that's a big deal for being in the playoffs, those bigger sleeves that go with these jerseys, and the fact that they're pairing them with the red pants. I think it's a good look. I think it's fun, and I think it's a good, extra added incentive for the fans to get loud and get excited about this game. I just sent Casey the picture of what the uniforms are going to look like on Twitter. They look really cool. I'm excited about it. I was at the Scarlet Out game the first time they did it, and it was a fun time. The stadium looked really, really cool in the all red. So hopefully the fans are able to execute it, and the Buckeyes are able to get a win. Because if you're wearing the strawberry uniforms and you lose to Tennessee, that is certainly not a good look. So hopefully they're able to pull it off. But I do like it. I think it's fun. But I understand why people don't. Standard uniforms in the playoffs is certainly something that I wouldn't be too terribly upset with being a rule.
Yeah, I just like the traditional jerseys. You mentioned it for rivalry games. Right here. This is what Ohio State's wearing for that. That's just not my cup of tea. I'm not a big fan of that. However, regular season game, fine, knock it out. But I guess for this game, just to see Tennessee come to the shoe.
Yeah, that's fair.
Either way, it's going to be. I just want to see it win at the end of the day. And I don't know where you are. You want Dagon. You want Ryan Day. I
can't root for Tennessee. I can't root for Tennessee. That's been built into me for the last 4 years. I can't root for Tennessee. So we'll deal with the Ryan Day firing later down the line. But we got to win this. We got to win this one.
Yeah, go Oregon. Right? Go Oregon in the second round.
But
Is
then
that what
you
you're
got to
saying?
root for Ohio State to lose a Rose Bowl, and I don't know if I can do that either. So then we're in the Final Four, and we might as well just win the championship at that point.
I know what you're doing. See, I knew you were leaning too hard. You were leaning too hard into your Michigan take not too long ago, and now you're. Oh, I can't. Nope, Tennessee can't go for Tennessee.
Oh, you're absolutely right.
You can't go. You can't root against Ohio State in the Rose Bowl. Well, it's a Final Four. I mean, you've come this far. Well, the title.
Might as well just win it all. Yeah.
So yeah,
Ryan Day wins the title. He has a winning record against top 10 opponents. And you got to keep him.
Just keep it all back.
What a corner we were in.
All right, Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. We got buy or sell later on in the show. We'll talk a little bit of NFL draft as we talked about earlier. Yes, the chime. It's almost that time. With the Bengals right now, if the draft order started today or if the season ended today, Bengals would be picking number 11 overall. Field Yates put out their ESPN's first mock draft. We'll talk about some of the top 10 draft picks as well as who the Bengals could take at number 11. But I want to talk about the Heisman finalists when we come back. We'll quickly take a look at those. The Heisman finalists were announced. Who do you think will come away with that trophy? We'll get to all of that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. All right, and we are back. This is Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, and the producer. We got Elliot Bering and Jacob Tisky back with you here on a Wednesday. Talk some NFL draft coming up around the corner. Field Yates, ESPN put out their first mock draft. The Bengals have the number 11 pick. And the Bengals can do a lot with that pick. We'll talk about that coming up here around the corner. Plus, Ashton Jeanty, will he go in the top 10? We'll talk about that as well. But we do know he will be in New York. The Heisman finalists were announced. We'll take a look at the Heisman finalists here. Ashton Jeanty, no surprise, one of the 4 Heisman finalists that were obviously invited to New York. Dylan Gabriel, the quarterback for Oregon. You see the season he's had. I mean, just look, when you're the quarterback and you've put up solid numbers and you're the quarterback of a team that's number 1 in the country and undefeated and wins a conference championship, obviously you're going to get that invite. Travis Hunter, no surprise there. Many deem him, and Vegas deems him to be the odds-on favorite to come away with the Heisman. And then Cam Ward comes in, throwing for over 4,000 yards and 36 touchdowns on the season. Yeah. Very impressive year for Cam Ward. I love every single one of these candidates. I think Dylan Gabriel is the least likely to win it of all of them. But I think it does come down to Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty. Cam Ward's had a great year with Miami not making the playoffs and not winning a conference title. I think it's going to be tough for him from that standpoint. But it obviously comes down to Travis Hunter and Ashton Jeanty, and I'm curious your guys' thoughts. Travis Hunter, we've been lightly touching on this throughout. I know both have given their opinions in interviews throughout, and it sparked a lot of conversation. Ashton Jeanty, just the most dominating season at running back since Barry Sanders. And then you have a guy in Travis Hunter that has done things that we've never seen. We've seen guys play both sides of the ball, but we've never seen guys basically start both sides of the ball and play every snap for the majority of the game. You see that in high school. You don't see that in college. And not only did he did that, he did that at a dominant and elite level, to the point to where there's a lot of question marks is when he is drafted, will that be the case for him when he gets to the NFL? But with him doing it in college, has that been enough to make him, he's obviously the odds-on favorite to come away with it, but will he come away with the Heisman? Is he your Heisman Trophy winner? Talking about Travis Hunter here.
He's not mine, but he certainly is going to win it. I don't think there's any question about that. And I don't think it's taking anything away from Travis Hunter for me to say that he's not my Heisman Trophy pick. I've said time and time again, I think there's two horrible bad faith arguments that make you look stupid when talking about the Heisman. People that say Travis Hunter is just snaps, that is dumb. He's doing something we've never seen before at this level. He's playing at a top 5 or so corner, top 7 or so wide receiver in the country. It's unbelievable what he's been able to do on both sides of the ball. He's impacting the game at a level maybe no one in college football ever has. It's incredible. That warrants Heisman votes. I'm not taking anything away from him. And then for people to say Ashton Jeanty is only in the Heisman conversation because he's getting 30 carries a game, and that's nonsense. Ashton Jeanty's also having a historic season. This is something that we haven't seen in a long time. I just think what Ashton Jeanty's doing is a little bit more impressive. And I don't, again, not taking anything away from Travis Hunter. I just think that they're using Travis Hunter now that once they were eliminated from the playoffs, even a little bit before, stat padding, not taking him out of games in blowups. He caught a third touchdown in a game when they were up 42-0. I mean, this is a lot of stat padding. Ashton Jeanty sat for 8+ quarters, 8 full quarters, and then the change that he was pulled in the previous quarters this year. And he still is about 180 yards away from breaking Barry Sanders' single season record. That's taking away 2 games. With 8 quarters. I know Barry Sanders did it in 11 games, but we're talking about the current system. And I think if Ashton Jeanty was talking about breaking that record, we should be talking about giving him the Heisman. Not only did Ashton Jeanty lead the country in rushing yards, 2,288 to Omarion Hampton's 1,600, he was second in the country if you just took Ashton Jeanty's yards after contact. 1,695 yards after contact. That's 35 more yards than the next running back in the country had total. Ashton Jeanty also had more 20-yard rushes than rushes for a loss this year. He had a crazy season in Boise State. He faced the highest percentage of stacked boxes of any running back in the history of college football since that stat was tracked. Wasn't tracked for Barry Sanders, to be fair, but an unbelievable season going up against a challenge from the defense that really no running back in modern history has seen. And his yards per carry stayed basically flat against 4-man, 5-man, 6-man, and 7-man boxes. He was productive against them all. It was just incredible what Jeanty was able to do this year, and I think he deserves the Heisman. But when they give it to Travis, I'm not going to fight.
Yeah, I've gone back and forth on it. I think it's Travis Hunter's award for the same reason Shohei Ohtani got it. When you're an elite level player at 2 positions, offensively and defensively, it's hard to beat that. Now, when is the award given out? Do we know the date of that?
Before the playoff, I'm pretty sure.
Before the playoff?
Well, the playoff, like bowl games and stuff, don't count.
But that's what I was saying. So, like, if you beat the record, if you would have beaten the record by now, I think
December 14th, so 3 days.
So no, it's over. Yeah, if you would have beaten the record, if Jeanty would have beaten the record, it would have been his. He didn't, so you missed it by 120 yards. I think you have to give it to Travis Hunter. I don't want to give it to Travis Hunter, but that's the way this world works, and he is going to win it, no doubt about it.
I do think something interesting about Travis Hunter in terms of talking about him being the best player in college football. He was a finalist for Wide Receiver of the Year and Impact Player of the Year. Yeah. He was not a finalist for the Thorpe Award. In the Big 12 this year, Thorpe Award goes to the best DB in the country. In the Big 12 this year, he won Defensive Player of the Year, and Shadur won Offensive Player of the Year. So you're telling me, based on awards, that Travis Hunter is better at offense than he is at defense. But he's not the best offensive player on his team.
Yeah.
So I have a problem with that messaging giving him the Heisman Trophy.
So, and this is repeating some of the stuff you guys have said. Travis Hunter comes away with the Heisman. He's well deserving of it. No doubt about it. Not going to lose sleep over it. Okay, whatever. I just think that when you look at 2 players who are impact players like these guys are, Ashton Jeanty and Travis Hunter, I will start to add the team success on top of things as well. And for instance, By the way, you take Travis Hunter off Colorado's roster, they take a major step back. There's no doubt about it. But if you take Ashton Jeanty off Boise, they're not even relevant. And I think that Boise State is Ashton Jeanty in 2024. Colorado is Shedeur Sanders, technically. And we could debate too who's more important to their team. The bottom line is we could debate who's more important to their team, Travis Hunter or Shedeur Sanders, from a Colorado standpoint. But the bottom line is Colorado could not win a bad Big 12 or even get to that conference championship game. That's not Travis Hunter's fault by any means, but at the same time, his talent elevated Colorado, but didn't elevate him to the level of which we watch. Ashton Jeanty is Boise, and that's why I have to put him ahead of Travis Hunter in this particular situation. I don't think Boise is even being talked about slightly at all. They're not even sniffing the playoffs if it's for Ashton Jeanty. You look at Travis Hunter, fantastic season, but Colorado's not even in the postseason at this point. I do think that when you're having dominant seasons and all things are being equal, which one helped elevate your team the most? Obviously, Travis Hunter elevated Colorado, no doubt. But you look at the level of which Jeanty elevated Boise to, they nearly beat the number one undefeated team in the country back in the first couple weeks of the season. And they've won 11 games since then. They win their conference championship. They get a first-round bye. All of that does not happen. We don't talk about any of that if it's not for Ashton Jeanty. To me, it should be Ashton Jeanty based on that. But both are deserving, regardless of how you flip the coin.
Yeah, I think it's a tough conversation. I do think a lot of the arguments against Ashton Jeanty dissolve when you get deeper into the numbers, which I think it really does help his argument the more and more you get into it, because he not only has he done it every single game, but the arguments against him are, like I said earlier, too many carries, and that he played in the Mountain West. Well, he had 200 yards and 3 touchdowns against Oregon. So the level of competition argument goes out the window, in my opinion. And then his yards per carry was one of the best in the entire country. So he's doing it regardless of the carries at a very high level. So I think all of that, kind of helps him in the overall picture here when it comes to debating this award. But they're going to give it to Travis Hunter. The thing that's really hurt the Heisman ceremony and the fun of it really in the last few years is the general public's knowledge of gambling markets. That's made the Heisman ceremony a lot less fun, because we saw about a week ago Travis Hunter moved to minus 5,000 to win the award, and discourse around who should win it in a year where there's 2 really, really good candidates kind of goes out the window, because everyone that's having these conversations sees the odds and says, this race is over. Why debate it? I think we should do something about putting out Heisman odds much closer to the ceremony, maybe after finalists are announced. Don't have them available until finalists are announced, or take them off during the season, have them available preseason. I don't know. I know everyone likes to bet them live, and there's good odds and ways to make money in ways like that, so I don't want to necessarily take that away. I don't know what the fix is, but seeing these odds before finalists are out and everything like that destroys a lot of the conversation around the Heisman. And I think that's some of the best conversation in the entire sport every single year, is debating who the most outstanding player is, and the public betting markets have really ruined that. But something I did want to point out with these finalists, all the conversation around them, is Jeanty, is Hunter, how great those two guys are. Cam Ward had such an unbelievable season, so underrated what he was able to do this year. 36 passing touchdowns, 4,100 yards. Just to put that in perspective, that's relatively close to the season that Mac Jones had in 2020, statistically. And Mac Jones finished top 5 in the Heisman, and everyone was talking about him potentially winning it if it wasn't for Devontae Smith. So the year that Cam Ward had is going to go unnoticed and unremembered because of how Miami ended it, didn't get to an ACC championship. He's probably not going to play in the Pop-Tart Bowl. So his time in Miami is come to an end. And for him to put up this season and it probably not be talked about ever again, that's a real shame, because it was a special one.
Has an underdog ever? Go ahead. Sorry.
No, you're good. Go.
Has an underdog ever won the Heisman? Because I feel like the when it comes to some of these gambling, you mentioned the odds. I feel like when you bring up gambling odds when it comes to these awards, usually when the favorite is the favorite at the end, they almost 1,000,000% win it.
Yeah,
I feel like has there ever been a time when coming into the Heisman or coming into really any award where that second place guy wins? And the only thing I can think of is when Joe Flacco won it last year, the comeback player of the year in the NFL. That was the only time I can ever think of when somebody who didn't have the odds-on favorite to win won.
My thing is that didn't matter when most people didn't know what the odds were.
Correct.
So people didn't know who the odds-on favorite were, so they were still having these debates. Like I think if everyone was an on FanDuel and DraftKings every day, there would have been much more discourse about who should win this award, Ashton Jeanty or Travis Hunter. And I think it would have been more earnest discussions about the stats and the merits of both players. But since Travis Hunter pulled away so early, I think that just kind of went out the window, and the people that would have been fighting for Jeanty kind of tucked their tail and said, well, this battle's over just because the odds told him it was. And not that they're wrong, and not that Jeanty had a chance to win. I just think some of the most fun discussions in college football have been taken away just because so many people know about those odds.
Yeah, the crazy thing, you mentioned Cam Ward a little bit ago, by the way. Cam Ward, 4,123 yards, 36 touchdowns, a season that'll go unnoticed, a very underrated season, no doubt. This is why I find it interesting. Like we're going to, not we, but like the Heisman voters won't lean his way. They'll discredit him because the team did not have the success to go up with those numbers, but we'll ignore that for Travis Hunter. That's the problem I have with ignoring this. Like, let's say Jeanty, guys, wasn't in this conversation and it was between Travis Hunter and Cam Ward, two guys who are stars on their non-playoff teams. At that point, is it still Travis Hunter? Now, I guess you'll say yes. The Vegas odds say yes, Travis Hunter. But at that point, like that's all I'm saying is the hypocrisy and how Cam Ward's being viewed versus Travis Hunter. Cam Ward's dominant season being just pushed off to the side and overlooked because his team didn't, even get to the conference championship or make the playoff, but either did Colorado with Travis Hunter. And that's why I gave the push to the middle with Ashton Jeanty from that perspective. But it is interesting how Cam Ward's just being completely ignored from that standpoint.
And Dylan Gabriel, obviously not the greatest statistical season this year in a vacuum, but he's up there all time in yards and touchdowns in NCAA history. So this Final Four for the Heisman is one of the best, maybe historically, when you're going to look back at it and see the names and the stats of all these players. I think they did a really good job getting these four guys in. It's always tough to have just four because there are so many outstanding players in college football. I think the biggest snub that a lot of people are talking about is Cam Scatterbo, the running back from Arizona State, over 2,000 total yards this year on much less touches than Ashton Jeanty. At least that's the argument that Arizona State fans are making. So certainly could have had an argument to be there, second best back in the country. I don't think that's necessarily a hot take even this year that Cam Scatterbo was. But to see him not be there, I think it would have been a stretch to have two running backs in the Heisman Final Four. I think the only position that's ever going to get two in a four-spot pool is going to be quarterback just because of how much that position means.
Last thing on the way out, is there anyone that was not invited that should have been invited, or is there anyone that was not included in the finalist pool that you thought should have been?
I think it's the right four. I think they got it right. You're going to cut it off at 4 because if you get to 5, then you got to get to 6. And they just went to 4 not even too long ago. It used to be 3. So I'm happy with the 4 that they got. I think they got it right.
I think you could have put Shador in there. But outside of him,
which QB are you taking out for him? Because he doesn't have the numbers of Cam and he doesn't have the wins of Gabriel.
Yeah, I mean I would probably take out Gabriel, but I think Jacob's right. I think they pretty much got their own. I think they got the right guys.
Yeah, if you look at the running back for Tennessee too, I liked him, Dylan Sampson. Yeah. I thought his season was right up there as well. I think if Tennessee, you take one more of those losses off, you take if they win one more game, and Dylan has a big game in those, I think that would help. But I'm not, again, should he be there? Not necessarily saying that, but I thought he was a fringe one as well that could have potentially been involved in that conversation. But nonetheless, Justin Kenner.
The fact that we're talking about the two biggest Heisman snubs being running backs, Dylan Sampson, Cam Scatterbo, not being in the Final Four, neither of those two were finalists for the Doak Walker. So just a reminder that these NCAA awards are an absolute joke, and they don't watch any games, and they never get it right.
It is very strange when those finalists come out. And you're right, like the offensive player of the year, but won't be listed for the Biletnikoff award, and how sometimes those get all moved around. It doesn't make any sense. But was it like Marvin Harrison Jr.? Didn't he not make the Biletnikoff award list or something?
He was.
Crazy?
He finished second. No, they gave that sucker to Jalen Hyatt, and I'll never, ever, ever forgive them. Highway robbery.
All right.
Marv should have had 2.
Field Yates, ESPN, put out their first mock draft of the season, and we'll take a look at the draft order and who Field Yates right now, as we sit here in December, is starting to kind of piece together who's going to end up where. The Bengals have the number 11 pick. Who does he have the Bengals taking at number 11? We'll take a look at that when we come back. More Off the Bench next. My favorite sound. As a Browns fan, that's my favorite sound. And as a Browns fan, I can be excited about that sound again because the Browns get their first-round draft pick back. And you know what would have been the most depressing thing ever as a fan of a team like Cleveland, who basically gutted their entire draft stock to get a quarterback that has just been worthless since arriving in Cleveland, is it would have been actually more painful to have my team finish with the top 5 pick and then not even have the pick to be able to use. Luckily, I guess if I'm going to put a positive spin here, Cleveland stunk this year, and this was the year to stink because at least if you're going to have a top 5 draft pick, you are going to be able to use your top 5 draft pick in the first round. So I'm happy from that perspective, but nonetheless, Field Yates put out ESPN's first mock draft of the season, and it's always interesting kind of taking a look early on, even before you get to the evaluation at the combine and everything. A lot of guys will sneak their way in. A lot of times there'll be media fatigue where we hype up the same players for so long we get bored, and then we'll find new players to say, hey, they're rising up the draft board for some of these teams. But as we sit here right now in the mid-December range, it is interesting to see what a lot of these prognosticators are kind of viewing how the draft is going to take shape. Right off the bat, again, with the New York Giants picking number 1 overall, Shedeur Sanders going to the Giants is who he has going number 1 overall. Is that a surprise to anybody? I don't think so.
It's a surprise to me for where he's going. I don't think Shedeur is going anywhere but Vegas. I think he's made that about as clear as you can make it without saying it straight up out loud. I think Vegas is going to get Shedeur, and I think Cam Ward's going to go to New York. I just think that's how it's going to shake out. Deion's going to do everything he can to get Shedeur in Vegas, I believe. So, and right now, I think Vegas, at least according to Tankathon, I mean, I trust Field Yates does his research and everything along those lines, but at least according to Tankathon, Vegas is picking number 1 right now, and the Giants are picking number 2. So I think if that is the true draft order there, Vegas might lose out to assure they get their guy, because I think they're locked in on Shedeur Sanders. But the top 2 quarterbacks, Ward and Sanders, are going to go to New York and Las Vegas, I believe.
So the Giants on their schedule, they have the Ravens, Falcons, Colts, Eagles. That's a pretty brutal schedule. The Raiders, on the other hand, have the Chargers, Saints, Falcons, Jaguars. I feel like the Raiders might be able to sneak a couple more wins. But Jacob the tweets that he has after every Raiders loss, very, very, very funny. So if he goes there, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I think that's probably where he's going to end up, and Cam Ward goes to New York. Most likely.
And again, with the Giants and Raiders and different mock drafts have those picks interchangeable between, or the order interchangeable at this point. Nothing's final. But you're right. I do see some mock drafts that have the Raiders picking number 1 overall and the Giants and others. But with the Raiders at number 2, just flip-flop those quarterbacks. Cam Ward going to the Raiders according to Field Yates. But yeah, I think those 2 QBs right off the bat, picks 1 and 2. But Travis Hunter's name's always going to be an interesting one. Mm-hmm. That's who they have going to New England. Jared Mayo, obviously the head coach there. You think there's some reports out there that right now he's his seat's getting a little warm, as there's a lot of reports, behind the scenes that he's losing the locker room a little bit and has not made a lot of friends with the front office, regardless of who's leading the New England Patriots. Is it safe to say that you agree with this pick, Travis Hunter going to New England?
I think unless you're a QB-needy team, and New England certainly isn't after taking Drake May last year, you're going to take Travis Hunter if he's on the board, because you don't want to be the guy that passes on him if he does work out, at least the way some people are projecting him to. You can't be the GM or coach that bet against that if he's going to be a generational two-way player in the NFL. So I think if you're not a QB-needy team and you're not locked into your position as the GM or head coach of that team, I don't think anyone's passing on Travis Hunter, because I don't think that's a risk people are willing to take with their jobs.
Are you drafting him for the wide receiving position? Are you drafting him to be a defensive player, or are you drafting him just almost as insurance, so he can't be a star on another team?
I think that's the question.
Because I don't think you draft him this high if he's a wide receiver. I don't think you draft him this high as a defensive guy. I think you draft him this high for what you just said. I think you draft him because you're just scared of what he's going to do elsewhere.
That's a terrible way to operate.
That's a bad way to operate. But I think he will be going to New England.
And then, when you hear, Travis Hunter come out, Travis Hunter says he's going to play both sides, but there's a lot of NFL analysts out there that have come out and said might be packages for both sides, but he'll have to make a decision as far as which position he'll lean more heavily into. Not saying it can't happen, but I mean, like you have to be able to, as a rookie, You can't go in as a rookie and be a rookie defensive player and offensive player and try to maximize your talent at both. I mean, can you see a scenario where, hey, we need you to focus on being a receiver to start, and then as you get more, or vice versa, on defense to start, and then as you get more comfortable there, we'll start using you in offensive packages and growing and expanding your usage there. That's what I'm curious to see if that's how he'll be eased into his NFL career.
I think that's a safe bet. He's not going to play, this many snaps in the NFL. He's not going to be a full-time player on both sides of the ball. I think he's probably going to be a corner. I think that's what he's best at, what translates easiest to the NFL for his skill sets. And then I think he'll probably have packages on the offensive side of the ball. Teams are going to try to use him both ways if they take him in the top 5, because that's the only way you can justify it.
How do you think his contract will work? I mean, obviously you have to see it.
Well, the rookie contract is
set. But I'm saying if they're able to use him both ways, you'd have to pay him twice, essentially,
$60 million?
right? Yeah.
The issue with that and the Shohei conversation, it's not the same, though, because there's a salary cap.
Correct.
So if you give him a $40 million receiver contract and a $30 million corner contract, which is the argument for Shohei, you're getting $350 and $350, then you're out of money. So not only do you have Travis Hunter, but then you don't have anyone else.
Yeah.
That's a third of the salary cap or whatever. So, I don't know how that's going to work.
My other question.
Well, we've seen.
Sorry, Kendra. The other question I had to the room was, where do you even feel comfortable? Like, clearly the top 5 teams, you're doing it because you're afraid of what he'll go and do elsewhere. What GM actually feels comfortable saying, like, yeah, this is worth it for me to take him at, 10, 15, 20?
If I'm a GM in this draft, I am looking at Travis Hunter and watching as much film as I can, and I am deciding whether or not I think he's a wide receiver or a corner, and I'm picking one. And I'm putting him on my big board as he relates to that position. I'm ignoring two-way. And I'm drafting him as what? Let's think here. Drafting him as the 4th receiver or the 3rd corner? 4th receiver or 2nd corner, maybe?
That makes him like a fringe first round or second round player.
15 to 20 maybe, or early 2nd round. But he's not going to be, which is crazy. I don't think it's crazy to say Will Johnson's a better corner. I think after that, it's going to get into some arguments. I think you can put him at 2 pretty easily. And then wide receivers, I'm taking Tedroy McMillan and Luther Burden and Amico over him. I just am. I think those are more NFL-ready players. I think Travis Hunter relied a lot on off-schedule plays and Hail Marys and crazy catches that just doesn't necessarily translate. It's a lot of what we talk about with quarterbacks when they go to the NFL. Those off-schedule running around plays in college, those don't really go to the NFL. And Travis Hunter was doing a lot of that, at least the receiver equivalent of it. So I think he's going to be good. I think he's going to be a fine player. I just don't think he's the top 5 pick if he's only playing one way.
Yeah, similar arguments for, not similar situations like this, but if you think back to like the Le'Veon Bell situation, even Deebo Samuel, where when you talked about the contract, Elliot, a little bit ago, Le'Veon Bell's big holdup with the Steelers years ago was, hey, I'm a running back, but you keep using, I'm also an elite wide receiver based on my usage in this offense. And if I'm an elite running back, I want to be paid as an elite running back. But if you're going to continue using me as a wide receiver in the pass game, I want to be utilized. I want to be paid as such as well. Deebo Samuel was bringing up a lot of those same things. Hey, I'm a wide receiver, and they're using him in the opposite way. They're using him in a lot of run packages. And that's what led to a lot of disputes there with that contract initially. And then you have this situation. Okay, I'm an elite cornerback. I'm an elite wide receiver. How are you going to be able to, pay him efficiently enough to show that from both of those? It's just a very weird thing. But like I said, as a rookie, and that's a good question too. You look at Will Johnson and others. Is he even better than those guys? You're going to bring in a guy that can play both sides, but is he elite enough at either side in the NFL to justify picking him? What makes him a Heisman candidate in college is what we're talking about in the NFL, but I don't think that's going to be the allure of him in the NFL. And if he is, then more power to him. That's a whole other dynamic of a player in the NFL we haven't seen. So that'd be very unique when it's all said and done. Carolina, according to the Carolina Panthers, have the number 4 pick, at least as based on how the standings kind of sit right now. Abdul Carter, the edge rusher from Penn State, is who Field Gates has going there. Carolina's interesting. I think right now they feel pretty good. They were a big storyline when they benched the quarterback earlier in the season, and since being benched and coming back, he's looked like a completely different quarterback. I think that's good for the Panthers. They get that question answered. I think they needed him to either be really, really bad or really, really good and make them know, let them know that they have something. I think he's let them know that they have something to work with, and now they can use their draft picks to address other needs. I think that's the other way Carolina can move forward, and this could be a good start right here with this pick.
Absolutely. I don't think anyone thinks they're going to draft a quarterback anymore. At least over the last couple of weeks, Bryce Young has shown that he has at least improved enough after that benching this year that you're going to go into next year with him instead of reaching on a second quarterback in 3 years. So I think that's good for Carolina, certainly what they need to do. Abdul Carter's a guy that I would love in Cincinnati. I think he's a plug-and-play, immediate impact edge rusher. He wore 11 at Penn State just like Micah Parsons. I think they're a pretty similar player off the edge, big, physical, strong guy, can get to the passer with speed and force. I think he's going to be an instant difference maker in the NFL at the edge rusher position. I would love him in Cincinnati, but obviously now sliding down the draft board, this is about where he's going to go. He's going to be a top 5, maybe at best top 8 pick. So I think he's out of the Bengals conversation now, but Carolina's getting a really good one in my opinion.
All right, we'll pick up with this on the other side. I want to get to the Bengals draft pick coming up, so we'll close out just to take it. We'll quickly, run through this mock draft to Field Yates, and then we'll get to buy or sell to close out the show. More off the bench when we come back. Field Yates mock draft, ESPN, continuing down the list. Again, Cincinnati Bengals have the number 11 pick, and we're almost there. We'll just quickly run through this real fast. Cleveland Browns have the number 5 pick. Kelvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas, going to Cleveland, according to Field Yates. Cleveland trying to figure out they're going to still try to keep this defense intact and, bring Jameis back and try to navigate through this contract over the next couple of years with Deshaun. And, you have the emergence of Jerry Jeudy, who's putting up numbers that not many people expected out of him. The Cleveland Browns felt confident that he was capable of this all along. Tillman has looked great whenever he's been out there. Of course, he's missed a few games since obviously we've seen Jameis Winston take over. Providing those answers to the Browns, they now know they don't have to use a top draft pick to go address the wide receiver position. Right now, they could focus on others. Their offensive line is aging. I don't look, this is a boring pick, but you know what? The identity of the Browns in recent years has been that offensive line, and it's starting to get a little older. They have to find ways to fix it. This could be one of those fixes right there. I've actually been a fan of, I've seen some that have said, hey, the Browns might be the team in that top 10 to look out for, to kick the tires on the Ashton Jeanty thing, depending on if they decide that we have our 2 wide receivers, our O-line, we need to address it. We could address it in later rounds, still solid enough to be one of the top in football. Now you had a playmaking running back to go along with those receivers. Are you the best in football? No. But now you have a playmaker at running back, something they don't have right now. I could see it being one of those 2 picks at number 5. But offensive line, probably the smarter pick for the Cleveland Browns to help them win now and in the future. But that's who he has, the Browns taking at number 5.
I think both of these top 2 linemen. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say I love the pick. I love the pick if you go O-line here, just because I know this O-lineman is going to want to protect this quarterback that they got right now. They're going to want in because I know it's a different situation when the other guy starts. But when Jameis Winston is the quarterback, everybody wants to follow behind him. They want to protect him, and I think that's the right pick. Do you think that the Cleveland Browns would make a shocking pick and just take Jeanty and say, Nick Chubb, you're out, and we're just going to run the ball down your throat?
If the Browns have to move on from Nick Chubb, and there's 4 games left, and in the next 4, if you got to be a little patient. I know coming off that type of injury, I'm not saying he's officially done, but if he has no burst, he's averaging less than 3 yards, just a little over 3 yards a carry. There's no burst at all. Like not around the edge, not up the middle, all the stuff that we've seen from Chubb for years, that's not there. So if the Browns want to do he's a fan favorite, if you lean into that, that's a bad decision, in my opinion. I think that's not the route to go. You have to replace him, and you could do that with Jeanty. I know you could say you can get a running back later in the draft. I just think Jeanty's a different kind of running back. We've seen what kind of impact when you have an elite level running back, assuming that he could be that. We've seen Zeke and others come in and be that right away. You look at the Eagles and you look at what the Niners got with Christian McCaffrey. I'm not necessarily saying Jeanty is that, but that's what you're anticipating. Anyone who picks him in the first round, that could be a difference maker. But Nick Chubb has 4 games to prove that there's something there, and if not, I would not mind the Jeanty pick in Cleveland. Although I still think they'll most likely go O-lineman one way or another. But we'll see.
I adore both these top O-linemen in this draft, Kelvin Banks, and then we'll get to it later, sadly, before the Bengals pick in this mock, but Will Campbell as well. I think both these top tackles have guard versatility, which is exactly what the Bengals need. I know all fans are saying you have to draft defense in the first round, no question about it. And I don't necessarily disagree, but I think if the board falls in a certain way where you're able to get either Banks or Will Campbell, the Bengals should jump on it. They could play guard at an elite level for the first 2 or so years of their rookie contract, and then when Orlando Brown's done, you slide him out to left tackle, and you have one of these two and Amarius Mims as a tackle pair for the long haul, and that's a hell of a way to go. So I think both of these O-linemen are instant starters, instant great players in the NFL. I think the Browns are making a good pick here. The one worry with Banks, and something that I keep looking at in terms of the Bengals potentially getting him as he falls down draft boards, is he got hurt in their game against Texas A&M. He got rolled up on, hurt his knee. Nothing serious, no surgery, not expected to miss the rest of the year or anything like that, but did not play in the SEC championship game. If he's unable to play in the playoff, misses a couple more games, maybe returns for 1 or 2 and doesn't look great, he could fall down the draft board just because of that injury and maybe into the Bengals' lap. But if not, and the Browns take him at 5, I'd be pretty upset about it because I think he's a great player.
Moving on again, the Jets have the number 6 pick, defensive tackle out of Michigan, and Mason Graham. Mason Graham, of course, like Michigan wasn't very good this season, but they had some NFL talent on that defensive side of the ball. He was one of those. And the Jets, even with all their question marks, whether they're rebuilding or not, one way or another, this is going to be a good draft pick for them.
Yeah.
And look, dominant defensive tackle out of Michigan and Mason Graham, and that's who he has the Jets taking at number 6.
Yeah, 2 years of production at a really, really high level for Mason Graham, which just isn't something you normally see from a defensive tackle, especially not one at a school like Michigan. He did it really for 3 years. If you go back to 2022, his freshman year, he got some significant run, got 2.5 sacks that year. But the last 2 years, being one of the best interior D linemen in football, everyone knew he was going to be a top 10 pick. It's just a question of how high he goes. I don't know if he'll even be here at this point in the draft, depending on how he tests. But he's going to be a great pick. Would love the Bengals to get him, but with the win against the Cowboys, there's no way they're going to get high enough on the board.
Next up, the Titans at number 7. I never could pronounce this wide receiver's name out of Arizona. Obviously, McMillan, the last name. But they have the Titans going wide receiver at number 7. Obviously, given their new head coach, a new weapon, your former offensive coordinator, giving him a weapon on that offensive side of the ball, one of the best receivers in football. They have Field Yates has going at number 7 to the Titans.
Look, if the Titans are going to take a receiver at 7, why don't you just send 39 our way and we'll give you T. Higgins and you can address a different need at 7.
I was going to say, drafting a wide receiver here makes no sense. Yeah?
I think it does. I think it makes a lot of sense.
They don't have a quarterback.
But are you going to reach for a quarterback, or do you draft a wide receiver 1 and then get a quarterback that's actually good?
I think
this is a better franchise move than reaching for a quarterback that you don't believe in at pick 7.
Yeah.
Because they just did that with Will Levis. I know that was a second rounder, but that's not a guy that they believed in being their QB of the future, and they drafted him just because he was there. And that's come back to bite him in the butt. So I really would applaud them for making this move, but I think likelihood they'll reach for a receiver, and it would probably be the end or reach for a quarterback, I should say, and that would probably be the end of Brian Callahan's job. I think he would extend his leash if he drafts a receiver and says, I'm going to get a quarterback down the line. You can't fire a guy if he never gets a quarterback. So maybe he just dribbles this out and preserves his job.
I read an article the other day that talked about the future of Aaron Rodgers right now. Doubtful that he plays with the Jets again, but if he does want to play, there's not a long list of teams that make a lot of sense for Aaron Rodgers. But as far as opportunities, one might exist there. You talked about Callahan and having to find a way to kind of extend his shelf life in Tennessee a little bit. You need that quarterback, but you can't trust Levis. If Aaron Rodgers is available and there's a nice wide receiver core there, the Titans popped up on that list. Is it likely? No. But a bridge quarterback. The Titans can go the bridge quarterback route in the offseason in free agency or trade and kind of go that route and still get a dynamic wide receiver and a playmaker here. Going to get a bridge quarterback and not having a dynamic playmaker, would it make sense? Obviously, the T. Higgins stuff, there's a lot of noise out there that and of course, the Bengals, a lot of interesting stuff yesterday we talked about with the future of T in Cincinnati, but if he's available, Tennessee might be the landing spot for him there as well. So who knows? But moving on.
I don't think Will Levis is going to be their starting quarterback next year, whether they draft one or not. I should put it that way.
Fair enough, and shouldn't be.
Should not be.
I don't have to watch it. Should not. I don't want to have to watch that stupid Mayo commercial anymore. I'm done with that one. Number 8, Jacksonville, the Jaguars. Will Johnson, the cornerback out of Michigan. Jacksonville has a lot of holes, a lot of problems. Obviously, the success of them is going to come down to whether or not Trevor Lawrence is the guy that they paid him to be. There's a little question marks of whether he's that guy or not. He has shown flashes. Obviously injured out for the rest of the year, but man, there's a lot of pressure on Trevor Lawrence heading into next year because he has a lot to prove. this is a good, safe pick. Go get one of the best defensive players in the draft if you're Jacksonville, and that's what they'd get here with Will Johnson out of Michigan.
Yeah, I see a lot of people for Bengals holding on to these two Michigan names, Brandon Graham, Will Johnson. I would love Brandon Graham in Cincinnati. Don't quite feel the same about Will Johnson just because of the lack of luck the Bengals have had with Michigan corners hitting at an immediate rate in the last couple of years. It's been exciting what we saw before injuries this year for Dax Hill and DJ Turner, but we've gone to the well one too many times, in my opinion, for Michigan DBs. So Will Johnson going before the Bengals pick, fine by me. I think he's a really good player. I think he's the no doubt number one corner in this class, and I'm sure we're going to get into that as we get closer to the draft season and the debates about Travis Hunter. I think Will Johnson's a far better corner than Hunter is. So the Jacksonville Jaguars are getting a really, really good one. It was talked about earlier this season that they were projected to be the first pick. Everyone had them taking Hunter, and if he was going to end up playing corner only for them, I think they end up with an overall big-time win here by falling down the board and getting Will Johnson.
Earlier, when I mentioned that the Browns would be going O-line and Calvin Banks Jr., the offensive tackle out of Texas, you said there's two O-linemen you really like. Who was the second one, Jake?
Will Campbell. Absolutely love him.
And that's who that's what I thought. So Field Yates, ESPN, we're taking a look and dissecting his mock draft leading up to the Bengals pick at number 11. But at number 9, the Chicago Bears, obviously the navigating through, they're going to be getting a new head coach. You know, you have your quarterback in Caleb Williams. And to protect that quarterback, obviously you have to take a look, at the guys up front. Will Campbell, offensive tackle out of LSU, as you just referenced, Jake, is who Field Yates has the Bears taking at number 9.
I think it's a great pick. He is my dream first-round pick for the Bengals. If I could have the whole board on the board, I would take Will Campbell. I think he's a perfect fit, ups the athleticism on the offensive line, can slide down to guard very, very easily for the rest of Orlando Brown's career before bumping out to left tackle. I love Will Campbell. I think he's the best tackle, best pass blocker in this class. He does have short arms, which always is a big deal for linemen as we get close to draft season. It's the equivalent of hand size for quarterbacks.
He's got the T-Rex arms.
People get scared about short arms for tackles. They think they're going to be guards. But over the last couple of years, with quicker passing offenses, RPOs, more distinct run games, we've seen that not matter as much. There was one tackle that went pretty high in a draft pretty recently that was famously said that was never going to work at tackle, had to play guard. That guy was Rashawn Slater, and he was an all-pro as a rookie at right tackle for the Chargers. So plenty of tackles with shorter than desirable arms have been working in the modern-day NFL. And I think when people, Will Campbell measures in and has those short arms, a lot of people might slide him down to guard, which could drastically benefit the Bengals and have him slide down the draft board. But I think he's the best pass blocker in this draft, regardless of the position he plays.
New Orleans Saints have the number 10 pick. Mikael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Very similar. Actually, they're not similar to the Bears at all. They other than the fact that they'll be looking for a new head coach. But you have a quarterback in Carr, but you don't have a quarterback. You don't have your franchise quarterback of the future. Again, I do appreciate the fact that a lot of these prognosticators out there aren't forcing quarterbacks on teams. There's going to be names that, at quarterback that, we've talked about more coming into the year. We've watched Jalen Milroe's stock drop, Quinn Ewers' stock drop. There's a lot of, quarterbacks that have had their stock drop. This one's a team that needs a quarterback, but he has them at number 10, taking the edge rusher, Mikael Williams out of Georgia.
Like I just said for the Bears, that if I had the whole board available, Will Campbell's the guy I want the most. This is the guy I want the least in the entire first round. Michael Williams absolutely terrifies me as a player. I think he's a one-to-one comparison to Myles Murphy, and we've seen how the Bengals haven't been able to really develop those edge rushers. I think he's a really exciting player, and I think he could be great in a system that develops him. I just don't trust the Bengals to develop these kinds of guys, so I don't want to pick him in the first round. He has 5 sacks on the season as an edge rusher that we're talking about being a top 10, top 15 pick. 4 of those 5 sacks came against Texas. 2 in both games against Texas. Just not sustained production off the edge for Mikael Williams. He's an exciting player when you look at the build. He's going to test out of the gym. He fits basically everything the Bengals look for in a draft prospect. He's been linked to the Bengals in as many mock drafts as I've seen any prospect linked to the Bengals. Big, big, big shout out here to the Saints for taking him off the board before the Bengals pick at 11. I despise Mikael Williams, but I do think this could come back and make me look like an idiot down the line, because if a team can develop him, he's going to be really good. I just don't trust the Bengals to do so. So I want to make that clear. He is a good prospect, just not one I want for the Bengals.
Yep. Casey Elliott, the Bengals pick at number 11. I don't know if you've taken a look at this mock draft. If you haven't, good. I'm just curious. The Bengals have a lot of needs. I mean, you guys have talked a lot about that. You list all the needs that the Bengals have. What do you think should be the position that the Bengals target the most with this number, or this, whatever their first round pick is? What is the position you think they should target the most or prioritize more than any other?
I'll go first here. For me, it's clearly on the defensive line. I mean, you look at the pressures across the board. The average pressures around the league is around like 225 to 250 for NFL teams. The Bengals have like 180 something. I mean, it is brutal. They need to get better on the defensive line. For me, it's edge rusher, defensive tackle probably after that, but I think we already took the top one, Mason Graham, off the board. So if I was a betting man, I don't know if we've said the name already, but James Pierce Jr. is probably the guy that I'd be looking at here as a solid edge rusher, a guy that has all the numbers, has longevity stats as well. So that would hopefully be the pick here in my mind. Elliot, you want to?
Yeah, I think you have to get to the quarterback. The Bengals defense is so truly terrible that you have to take a defensive player with the first overall pick. If you're not going to do that, if you're going to take somebody on the offensive side of the football, I would go wide receiver just because I think the Bengals are in desperate need of one when they lose T. Higgins coming into next season. So I'm in the same boat as Casey. Trey Hendrickson can't possibly do it alone. When you have the league leader in sacks and your team is dead last in sacks, there is a clear issue. I want somebody that can get to the quarterback. I want an edge rusher. I want somebody that can at least make a difference to help Trey Hendrickson, or if Trey Hendrickson's gone, can replace Trey Hendrickson, or at least to some degree. You can't probably fully replace Trey Hendrickson because he's very good at football, but at least some variation of that. I would want the Bengals to take defense here. If they don't, then wide receiver is a must.
I think the only wide receiver you consider here is if that Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona drops, just because his body type is exactly T. Higgins. 6'4", big body, 50-50 ball receiver, even with more speed. I know we got T. Higgins at 33 and have all loved him so much, but we're talking about a guy here who's a top 5 pick in some mock drafts. So to replace T. Higgins with Tetairoa McMillan, I think that's a conversation that should be had if he's on the board at that point in time. But if not, I agree with these guys. You got to go defense if both those linemen and McMillan are gone.
So it sounds like the trick to saying that receiver's name is you just say it really, really fast. I'm not even sure if you're actually enunciating it correctly.
Tetairoa.
Okay. All I have is Tetairoa, and then you just moved on. But I'm not judging because that's sometimes what you have to do. If you just quickly just go through it, you don't have to actually enunciate it. But no, well, I can't pronounce it. It drives me crazy. Now, with the number 11 pick, Field Yates, with the Cincinnati Bengals have the number 11 pick in this mock draft for Field Yates, ESPN. James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee, is who he has the Bengals taking with their number 11 pick, which, of course, fits the position that you guys just talked about the most outside of the receiver position that you mentioned, with McMillan potentially dropping there. But not sure how much you guys know about this guy out of Tennessee. Buckeye fans, we might get to learn a lot more about him coming up here in a few weeks. But James Pierce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee, is who he has the Bengals taking at 11.
This is a guy who was in number 1 pick conversations before the season. And not that he's necessarily fallen out of them production-wise. It's just other guys have flown up the board, as they always do in NFL seasons. 9.5 sacks last year as a sophomore, 7.5 sacks so far this year as a junior. He had an interception last year. Played a little bit more off-ball as an outside linebacker last year, moved down to a true defensive end, defensive lineman this year. And he's succeeding at a very high level. I would love James Pierce, 6'5", 245, a little bit more slender than the edge rushers the Bengals usually lean towards, but he's one of my favorite guys in this entire class. I think his ceiling is much higher than basically anyone but the guy I just said I hate, Michael Williams. I think his ceiling is insanely high, but I also think James Pierce's floor is about as high as it can get for an edge rusher at this point. I think he'd come in and be a difference maker immediately, and that also alleviates, I know we don't want to talk about it, I know it hurts, but it alleviates the need to extend Trey Hendrickson. If you don't draft an elite edge rusher, you don't get one in the building this season on the last year of Hendrickson's deal, you have to extend him. And I'm not saying I don't want to, I just want the option to not do that. So,
and one of the things I really like about him is the fact that he, in every metric, is in the top 10 of just about every category. Run stop rate, pass rush win rate, pressures. He's in the upper echelon of college football, and he's doing it in the SEC. Yes, he's a bit undersized, and Bengals usually don't tend to lean towards those guys. He's about like 245, I think, is what he's listed here. But he's also a junior. Like I think he's going to test out of the gym too.
I think he might run like 4.5.
Yeah, and if that's the case, you all know my RAS score. I mean, he's
going to be a RAS score darling, man.
Yeah, and so
Razzle dazzle.
that to me makes it just like an easy choice. Like he's the clear number 2, if not even argument for number 1 edge rusher in this class, pure edge rusher. I think Abdul Carter, he's literally Micah Parsons light.
Yeah.
That's why he's in the top 5. And then after that, it's James Pierce Jr. It just makes too much sense for the Bengals here at pick 11 to go here.
Getting a player like this at pick 11, that's the dream. I mean, we talked about falling out of the top 10 and why that might not be a good thing in a class like this because there's only so many blue chip prospects. And that is the case every year, but it feels like this class in particular, there's less of those guaranteed guys, a lot more flyers, a lot more developmental guys. Not that there's bad prospects in this class. A lot of guys I'm excited about. But for a team that struggles to develop players and you kind of get what you get once you draft them with not a whole lot of improvement, I think this isn't the best draft class for us. So sliding out of the top 10, top 8 really did hurt, I think, in terms of the people we're going to be able to get because I think that 4-spot fall from 8 to about 12 is the biggest difference in the entire draft in terms of what kind of players you're able to get. And now with the Bengals picking at 11, the dream for all Bengals fans is that teams reach on quarterbacks. We're rooting for Quinn Ewers to make a run in the playoff and go in the top 10. We're rooting for Jalen Milroe to score 6 touchdowns in the ReliaQuest Bowl and go in the top 10. We're rooting for Carson Beck to somehow get healthy and win a couple playoff games and sneak back into the top 10. And then certainly Cam Ward and Shadur Sanders. If we get most of those to happen, we're talking about 4 out of 10 picks potentially being quarterbacks in a year where quarterbacks are not worthy of that draft position. So hopefully some of those blue chip players that we were circling, picking at 8, 9, 10 could still be there at 11, 12, 13 if teams aren't taking them where they should be taken.
Yeah.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers, Chatterbox Sports on YouTube, ESPN 1410 Wing AM in Dayton. Again, Field Yates, ESPN mock draft. The Bengals taking James Pierce Jr., edge rusher out of Tennessee. And of course, there'll be a lot more mock drafts. A lot of names probably circulating in and out of that particular spot. And honestly, with 4 games left to go, and the Bengals at this point, you've got come to the point where you're not really tanking for a better draft pick. You've come too far at this point. You're more competing for that playoff spot, although still unlikely. They could continue to, have a later and later draft pick too. So the names are definitely going to continue to change as we get closer to April.
One other name I've been circling, and not that we're going to go through the whole 32, at least I don't think that was your plan, but coming in at 13, The Dolphins took Malachi Starks, safety from Georgia, and it might sound crazy, as I've been a don't pay a safety $20 million guy in Jesse Bates for a while now, and now I'm talking about taking a safety in the first round, but if the Bengals aren't going to address that position in free agency with a big-time name like a Javon Holland or a Budda Baker, someone that's a real difference maker, I wouldn't be too opposed to taking Malachi Starks at 11, 12, 13, somewhere in that range, if the board falls again without those tackles, maybe without a James Pierce on the board, without, Will Johnson or Mason Graham. I would look at Malachi Starks. I think he's a versatile safety, can play in the box, a 3-year starter at Georgia, an All-American twice. He's a guy that's produced at a really, really high level. I would love to see him in the back end of this defense. I think he would fix a lot of problems for us.
Yeah, not only just that, too, with how Mike Hilton has been struggling in coverage this year. He's played a lot in the slot this year. I think that's a good fit. Malachi Starks would be a guy that could fill in multiple different holes, not just the safety, but your slot corner kind of gets solved there as well. That would be a really good pick for Cincinnati as well.
And then the other 2 edge rushers that I love in the first round, if James Pierce isn't there and maybe you don't want to reach on a receiver or something like that and not a position you need, you're locked into that edge rusher position. I love the 2 Texas A&M guys, Nick Scorton and Shamar Stewart. I think they're both really, really good players. 2 very different players in this year's draft class, but 2 of the better edge rushers, both first-round picks, basically wherever you look. The interesting thing about Shamar Stewart as an edge rusher, he's 6'6", nearly 300 pounds. And I know that sounds like an interior guy. That's metrics that usually lead you to the inside. But if you look at Shamar Stewart, he doesn't look like an interior guy. He carries it very well. He's a physical, powerful rusher. Not a ton of speed, but I think he'd help a lot in the run game, be a really good player for the Bengals. And then Nick Scorton, more of your traditional edge rusher, 6'4", 285, a lot of speed off the edge, a great, more James Pierce type edge rusher. So if we're going to lock in on the edge, I think either of those 2 guys would be a good first-round pick as well.
Last thing, too, that's kind of interesting. If you're a Buckeye fan, Jake, the Bills at number 30, they have taken number 29, Emeka Egbuka. Obviously, they took Coleman last year. They just gave up a third to get Amari Cooper from the Browns earlier in the year. They're trying to get this wide receiver room right. They're trying to figure it out, and they're piecemealing a lot of it together. But that'd be wild. Back-to-back years, first, wide receivers in the first round, just trying to find weapons to stick for Josh Allen in Buffalo. But that'd be interesting. Emeka Egbuka in Buffalo with Josh Allen. That'd be interesting.
Absolutely. I like Egbuka a lot. I think he's really, really good. This mock draft has him going as the third wide receiver behind Luther Burden, going earlier in the draft, number 20 to the Commanders. And I think Emeka is better than Luther Burden. I would take Emeka higher in this draft. I think he's just more versatile. We've seen him win on the outside. We've seen him win in the slot. I think he'll be a dominant slot receiver in the NFL, which I guess is kind of why I don't understand this pick. I think if the Bills are going to attack a wide receiver, the last one I would draft in this class is Emeka Egbuka, and it's not because I don't believe in him. I just said how much I do. But Keon Coleman, primarily a slot receiver. Khalil Shakur, primarily a slot receiver. They line up Dalton Kincaid in the power slot a lot. I think you're drafting a guy that has the same skill set as a lot of guys on your roster already. So I wouldn't necessarily be jumping for joy with this pick. I think he'd be a great weapon for Josh Allen. He'd probably put up pretty good numbers, but I think it's really important to differentiate the skill sets in your wide receiver room, and this wouldn't do that for Buffalo.
All right, off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Let's talk a little baseball when we come back. By the way, the Guardians making some interesting moves. Guardians fans a little upset about a surprising move. They move on from one of their best players. We'll talk about that. Plus, Jake and I were talking earlier this morning, and he brought up the fact that, hey, like some of these deals that we've seen get done already in the early goings, they're kind of much bigger deals than we thought. How much does that impact the Reds in their pursuit to upgrade their roster in free agency or via trade? We'll talk about all of that more when we come back. More off the bench next. All right, welcome back off the bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers. Justin Kinner, Casey McAllister, Elliot Ring, and Jacob Tissett with me here on a Wednesday. We got buy or sell coming up around the corner. I know Jake's probably happy we got to spend some time on the draft. Right now with only a month left in the regular season, playoffs around the corner. Teams are being eliminated from playoff contention left and right. The draft order, starting to get a good idea for maybe not the exact order, but the list of teams that we know are going to be in the mix for 1 through 10 when it's all said and done. The Bengals just on the outside looking in, at least as of right now, with that number 11 pick. But as we talked about yesterday, although unlikely, playoffs still a slight possibility. Very tough stretch for the Denver Broncos coming up. Cincinnati has an easier slate of games coming up. It starts this week with Tennessee. We'll focus on that more later in the week as well. They got the Titans. They got the Browns. Obviously, that big one with Denver. And then, of course, Pittsburgh to close out the regular season. But Pittsburgh, if they have the division clinched or a playoff spot, comfortably in hand, at that point, they may be resting their starters. So Cincinnati has a window here to go on a run to potentially win these final four and put them in a position. But a lot has to go right. But figured we'd spend a little time on the draft as we sit here today, nonetheless. But we took a look at the draft pick again. We knew Cincinnati in need of defensive help. The edge rusher Pierce from Tennessee is who Field Yates has going in that direction towards Cincinnati. But as we talked about, some of those names will shift more and more throughout. MLB's summer of overpaying players could potentially be the main talking point here. Jake, you sent a note earlier today that, hey, the deals that we have seen get done here initially pretty early, a lot of teams not really reaching, but overpaying for guys, what we thought the market for certain position players would be. And we use that knowledge to kind of put the Reds in particular conversations of how we know they can operate or not operate, the names that we thought the Reds could even operate in, those names are going for significantly higher amounts as well. What are some of those names that are popping off to you?
I think it was really interesting last night, what really brought this into focus for me was Max Fried. I think that was the biggest deal, at least for the trajectory of this offseason, in my opinion. I know everyone circles Juan Soto. Even though that was a little higher than we expected, a lot higher once you do the opt-out clause and gets up above $800 million. But yeah. I still think we all expected him to have a record-breaking deal. So even though that was an overpay, that didn't set off my alarms yet. But this Max Fried deal, an 8-year, $218 million contract for a 31-year-old pitcher that has battled injury concerns over the last few years. You're paying him $27 million in his age 39 season. That's just a preposterous price point. And then you hear Nick Kroll last night with the comments, Charlie Goldsmith reported he had the comments that they're having more major league for major league trade discussions than they are free agency discussions when it comes to adding to the Reds. And comparing that to the contracts we've already seen pop up and a lot of the things going around the league, not just the Jonathan India for Brady Singer trade, but a lot of other MLB for MLB trades happening as well. You have to think if the Reds and these other small market, mid-market teams are getting priced out of a lot of these players. I mean, we see the Dodgers signed Michael Conforto to a 1-year, $18-19 million deal, and then they're attached to Teoscar Hernandez, two of the top bats on the outfield market, to platoon for them at that price point in which other teams were going to ask him to be an everyday player. And then you see Max Fried signing an 8-year contract. What small market team's going to give a 31-year-old an 8-year contract? And then we all already knew we weren't going to be in the Juan Soto price range. But to have 6 teams outbid your owner's net worth for one player, that's a pretty, upsetting thing to look at. So I think with the way this offseason is going so far, it could be a real big problem for the Reds. As we look to address a lot of these positions, you're going to have to go the trade route, I believe, to get a lot of exciting players just because of the way these prices are going. I thought Shohei Ohtani and Juan Soto were strictly outliers, generational players reaching free agency at a generational time, and they're getting contracts that reflect that. It seems like these contracts are affecting everyone else more than I thought they should, and raising the bar for the average and mid-level and even just the slightly above average players. Max Fried has been an ace in his career, but they're paying this guy this money to be what? They're 3, they're 4, maybe even they're 5, depending on how Luis Gale continues to progress. So super interesting to see how this continues to go, and the big market teams just continue to win.
Yeah, Alex Cobb yesterday was signed to a 1-year deal for $15 million. Didn't play a game last year. So, signing Nick Martinez, people got upset about $21 million. That's what it costs. Like, if you want to play the game, that's how much it costs. It sucks. I mean, we all know, we all hear Kinner, Jacob, Casey. Every one of us knows that it's absolutely terrible the direction the MLB is going, Major League Baseball is going, with these contract structures. It's terrible. There's deferred payment. You can pay your guy infinity money. I mean, it's infinity money. We're playing with monopoly money here, and we're asking the Cincinnati Reds to get in the ring with $700 million. That's just not. It's not worth our time. It's honest to God. If there was not a team in Cincinnati, of course I wouldn't watch baseball. It's a joke. It's an absolute disgrace. And until something gets done about it, we have to sit here and complain. Every single solid starting pitcher gets paid $20 million. That's not even a good pitcher. Frankie Montas is getting paid like $20 million. It's a terrible deal. So the way Major League Baseball is going, the way it's gone, it's garbage. But you just have to sit here and you have to take it and you have to play the game. The Reds know what they have to do. You have to hopefully put your name in a few rings. Honestly, what you got to do is you have to win trades. You're not going to sign anybody anymore. You can take all that out the window. Right now, you have to focus on making solid trades, evaluating risk-reward with who you're going to give up, who you're going to get back. A name that's been now linked to the Reds is Luis Robert.
How do you feel about that one?
I think it's worth the risk. I think Luis Robert's really, really good at baseball.
Clay Snowden made a great point last night on Chatterbox Reds. He says in the next 3 years that you're guaranteed to have Luis Robert, the chance that he averages a 3 WAR in those 3 seasons is higher than the prospect you trade for him hitting 3 WAR at any point in his career.
Yeah.
I think that's a really good point to say, and that timeline of his contract lines up perfectly with the window the Reds are going for. You have an easy out, no money afterwards. You're not in a Moustakas situation if it goes poorly. I think it makes a lot of sense for the Reds.
I think that's one where I'd absolutely do it because, A, you need an outfielder. And even so, you need somebody with a little bit of pop, a little bit of flair. He's got it all. Luis Roberts, an incredible talent. His one knock is that he needs to stay healthy. So if you are concerned about health and injury, and we got to deal with it with Matt McClain this year, Nick Lodolo this year, Andrew Abbott, I would have a little bit of concern there. But at the end of the day, what are my options if I don't get him? Jesse Winker?
Right.
I'll take my chances with Luis Robert.
Yeah, and I know, Jake, for a long time, too, you've been I like looking at the free agent market and seeing who the Reds can go get, but you've been pounding the table about trades even back when we were at the All-Star break, about like that's where the Reds are going to improve this roster through the trade market more than anything else, and that's pretty much been the majority of the offseason conversations. Garrett Crochet, Reds, what do they have to give up to go get him? They go get Brady Singer. They had to give up Jonathan India to go get him. It's not like we're hearing the Reds tied to any free agent names out there for this very reason right here, but at least there are opportunities to go improve the roster, because if it was just simply put, the Reds have to be competitive in free agency, this roster is not getting better. So at least we're seeing them acknowledge that and lean into the fact that the best way to improve that roster is through that. The other thing, too, is a lot of times we put the Reds in a box and say, hey, these are the teams that have let it be known that they're probably going to move on from these types of players. There's also other teams who kind of surprise all of baseball and move on from all-stars out of nowhere. The Cleveland Guardians, of course, they just moved on from their all-star second baseman, Andres Jimenez, and that was announced yesterday. That fan base is losing its damn mind. They're trying to figure out in a season where you're for the fifth straight year, I know I keep bringing that up, near the bottom in payroll, you end up getting lucky and developing and having a roster that has so many all-stars on it. You should be looking to add to that roster and keep that roster intact. Instead, they're sending guys out. That fan base is really frustrated. They are questioning what the hell is going on. It may not be a horrible return that they got, but again, moving on from core all-star players just doesn't seem to make sense in Cleveland, and using money as an excuse also doesn't make sense when you're not spending any. So at the end of the day, there are players that we look at and we say, hey, this player is probably going to be available. This player will probably be available. There's always a surprise trade market that pops up. So like we're looking at potential names the Reds are tied to. I'm excited to see what comes out of winter meetings, because there's names that are probably available that we haven't even read any reports of the Reds being linked to yet. And that's really what I'm kind of sitting back and being patient looking at that. I think the Reds are being patient as well. I think they're not willing to just give up anything at the first trade offer that's presenting itself to them. I think they're doing their due diligence, kicking the tires on a lot of possibilities. The problem is when the Reds want to do their due diligence and be patient, sometimes a lot of other teams jump in line and take care of business. So you got to be patient if you're Nick Krall. You don't want to jump on the first one that pops up, but you also don't want to be too patient and sit back and let all the top trade opportunities disappear as well. That's that juggling act he's trying to navigate through for the time being.
The fact that Nick Krall comes out and says that the conversations they're having, teams prefer MLB for MLB trades rather than prospect trades, and they're not having a lot of success in the free agent markets that they thought they were going to. I think that's even more reassuring for Reds fans, that he has these beats on all the different markets, that they are on the phone and calling about trades and free agency and MLB trades and prospect trades. The fact that he knows how all of those markets are trending right now, or at least is saying that he has an idea of how those trades are going, that leads me to even further to believe that they actually are attached to a lot of these guys, that they actually are trying to make a lot of these moves, that they actually are willing to trade some MLB talent for MLB talent. And I think that's what they're going to have to do, because we know that trading prospects and mortgaging your future on a star probably isn't the best way to go for the Reds organization. But if they can pick and choose and win some of those battles, that's going to be the biggest thing, and that's going to be how they can win, because you're going to have to make some trades with how this free agency is going. You're not going to be able to get the stars that we had circled, or the second level stars. We didn't think we were going to get Juan Soto or anything like that, but the second level guys, the Santanders, the Teoscar Hernandez, I think those are kind of out for us now based on how these contracts are going. I just don't see that happening. So trading for a Luis Robert or a Taylor Ward with the Angels, which they were linked to a couple days ago, I think both of those would be phenomenal moves and probably the best opportunity to improve this team.
All right, this is Off the Bench presented by United Dairy Farmers. Buy or sell coming up next. buy or sell? We'll jump right into it. Still trying to keep an eye on the Bill Belichick situation. Obviously, reports came out yesterday that he agreed to be North Carolina's next head coach. But North Carolina, they haven't really come out and said, oh, thank goodness, the job is yours. Still waiting on that news to break nonetheless. But with that being said, buy or sell, Bill Belichick will never coach in the NFL again. Buy or sell?
I'm going to buy that. I don't think there's this long line of teams waiting to hire Bill Belichick in the NFL. I think that's, kind of made up partially. I think if he was going to get hired in the NFL, he wouldn't have had to take a year off. I don't think that the mentality is just going to change right away about Bill Belichick coaching in the NFL. Someone might give him a flyer. Atlanta was close last year, but I just don't see it. I think Bill Belichick's going to be in the media or maybe end up back in college. I think North Carolina is probably the only option in college. I don't think he's going to go out and search for jobs. I think if this one falls through, he might not coach again, which I know there's been mixed reports about whether or not he wants to. Some people saying yes, his 20-year-old girlfriend saying no. So we'll see who's telling the truth. But, I wouldn't be completely shocked if Bill Belichick doesn't coach again.
Yeah, Bill Belichick has, he is 72 years old. He's 72 years old. Nobody's hiring an 80-year-old coach. How old was Coughlin when he got canned or when he left, whenever that situation ended? Was he 80?
I don't know.
We'll look that up.
Find that out for me. And I just don't think his model of coaching is something that NFL teams want going forward. I think they respect Bill Belichick. I think if he would have stuck around in NFL free agency this offseason, I think somebody might have taken a flyer on him just because of his name. But I don't think anybody really believes in Bill Belichick building a future for the franchise. I don't think anybody has that vision of him any longer. So Bill Belichick, buy or sell, he's going to be back in the NFL. I'm going to sell it. I think he might be a front office guy, maybe, but he will not be a head coach. He will not be a coach in the National Football League.
Tom Coughlin was 73 when fired from the
Really?
2019.
Okay, so he's out. He's gone.
He's only
Bill
78
Belichick,
now.
you wonder if the only reason he's even sniffing around the college jobs is because basically his agent has let him, because his agent is having a lot of conversations with teams. Hey, basically taking the temperature of what the head coaching situations are like in some of these markets. For instance, Dallas, that's where he seems to be linked to a lot, although I don't see how those, as many people are questioning how it's going to work in college, I question just as much how he would mesh with Jerry Jones. I just don't see how that would work in any capacity either. But you would have to think that his agent has reached out to many teams already saying, hey, what is your head coaching situation like? If there was an opening, what would your interest in Belichick be? My guess is that homework has been done and the findings have not been approved. That hasn't been something that Belichick has liked. I think the only reason he's sniffing around the college ranks is because I think he's probably, found out that the NFL, there's no NFL interest, at least as of right now. But if you don't coach in 24 and you don't coach in 25, the likelihood of any team out there knocking down the door to get Belichick in 26, I just don't see that being the case. Belichick's best chance to coach in the NFL again would be this upcoming season. But he's already accepted, or at least let it be known that, hey, I will accept this job if it's officially offered to me. I think that's him waving the white flag saying, hey, I've been told there's probably no opportunities. Although people say, hey, Jacksonville makes sense. Dallas makes sense. If New England opens back up again, if this Mayo thing is true, maybe he goes back there. I don't think any of those reports are true because why else would you go to North Carolina when it's all said and done?
Yeah.
So, I don't think he's coaching in the NFL again. Just based on that.
I think this North Carolina thing's gone way too far in these negotiations, in these reports, for me to believe that there's real NFL interest. Because I don't think he would have taken this far if there was a real chance or 100% chance, like a lot of people make it sound like, that he's going to get an NFL job next year.
We talked about it on yesterday's show. The Bengals, a 27-20 win over the Dallas Cowboys. They improved their record to 5-8. They're technically, mathematically still in the playoff hunt, but that's not what people were talking about in the postgame. Joe Burrow made some interesting comments, him and Jamar Chase, regarding the future of T. Higgins in Cincinnati. Jamar Chase posting pictures on social media of the trio all together. It just has people talking about the future of T. Higgins in Cincinnati. Joe Burrow saying that they're going to do whatever they can to keep him there. He could say it, but do you believe it? Buy or sell T. Higgins, a Cincinnati Bengal in 25?
I'm going to buy it. I don't think Joe Burrow says something like that in a press conference and he doesn't mean it. I think Joe Burrow truly 1,000,000% believes that they are going to get T. Higgins back. And if that's the case, then I'm going to probably lean toward his side. I think Joe Burrow is going to get what he wants. And if he wants T. Higgins, the Bengals are going to pay T. Higgins. I don't know what the numbers will be. I don't know even if T wants it. I don't know what the hell is going on. But I know Joe Burrow saying something like that. That's a calculated move. I think it was sending a message, and we'll see if the front office listens. I think that he's going to be back in some capacity, whether it's just a double tag, whether he's going to actually get a deal done this offseason. I think T. Higgins will be playing games for the Bengals next season, yeah.
I'm going to sell it. I just don't think so. I think the offers from elsewhere are going to be too big, and once they get over about $32 million or so, which I think is going to be right around where he gets, the contract I keep circling for T. Higgins, what he's going to get elsewhere, I think is right about A.J. Brown, 3 years, $96 million, $32 a year. And the contract I'd be comfortable giving him in Cincinnati tops out at about Amon-Ra St. Brown, which is about $30 million a year. So I think there's a pretty significant discrepancy there when he hits the open market. I don't think the Bengals are going to be able to match. I hope you're right. I hope they do. The one thing that you said that I would really push back on, I hope that they do not play him on that second tag. You lose everything if he plays on that second tag, because not only do you know he's walking in free agency next year and you have to negotiate with him on the open market, but you cannot tag him again. So there's no chance to get any kind of return for him. I think the Bengals, it's a no-brainer. It's a formality kind of to tag him when that deadline presents itself in February. They're going to do that if they have anything going on in their head. If they have any brains, they're going to tag T. Higgins right at the start of that window, and then they're going to negotiate with him on a one-on-one basis without the outside influence. He's not going to have any idea what his market value is. At least that's the Bengals' mindset and goal here with that second tag. And then if you're unable to reach common ground and get an extension, you trade him for a top 50 pick. You have to. You have to get something back because there's too many holes on this team. And if T. Higgins leaves, there's another big hole at wide receiver. And you need more draft capital to fix that hole, or spend money in free agency and use that draft capital to fix the hole you're now ignoring in free agency because you're spending that money on a wide receiver. So I don't think there's an option that he plays next year on the tag. I think they will either extend him for 4 or 5 years or trade him.
So everything Jacob says I agree with, but then I also agree with Elliot. I asked this even later in the day on my show yesterday. I said, I'm not questioning what he said. I'm questioning why he said it. Why go into that much detail in the post game? Because they're asked about T all season. You know, and we know that they all want to play together, but I just thought that was like a point of emphasis. I remember when Joe Burrow spent a lot of time in a press conference stressing the importance of using Burton in the offense. The Bengals tried that, and obviously the issues with Burton continued, and then you saw how angry he was with Burton on the sideline when they had that bad game a few weeks ago. Like Joe Burrow picks his spots in press conferences when he wants to let a little bit more out. So that's why I'm leaning towards Elliott's side, saying, hey, like I think there was a reason he said that. But at the same time, let's look at it logically from this standpoint. If Joe Burrow took every dollar that he had coming to him in the market to become the highest paid quarterback in the NFL, and Jamar Chase is going to take every dollar he has coming to him to become the highest paid wide receiver in the NFL, why is it fair to T. Higgins to take $1 less to stay to play with those two? And that's not a shot at Jamar or Burrow, but let's not act like it's fair for T. Higgins to take less to play with those two when those two didn't take a penny less to try to make it work for all three to stay together. Not that that's their responsibility, but there are people, and Jake, you're one of them as in a bad way, but like, yes, the rate that he would have to go for to stay in Cincinnati would be less than what he can get going somewhere else. And why would that be fair to T? Why, as a teammate or as a friend, would Joe Burrow or Jamar Chase look at T and be okay with him taking less to play with them while they took every dollar and will take every dollar that they have coming to them? That's where I can't get on board with that. I don't see T taking $1 less to sacrifice that to play with them when they didn't sacrifice $1 for him to stay with them. That may sound like a negative comment. It's not. That's just the reality of it. They didn't shy away from money. Why should he? That's why I sell it. I do not see him being in Cincinnati in 2025.
Certainly a fair point, and I'm not saying that he should turn down an extra $2 or $3 million. I'm just saying that's what has to happen for him to come back to Cincinnati. There's no way you're going to be able to pay him with the Patriots or the Commanders or any of these teams that need a number one wide receiver on the market, and you're not going to be able to give him that contract. So he's going to have to take that pay cut in order to stay in Cincinnati. I don't know that he will. I would say it's unlikely. But I think the difference between T. Higgins and the Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow conversation here is where they would end up. If Joe Burrow leaves Cincinnati when his rookie contract was up, didn't sign the extension, and he hits the open market, wherever Joe Burrow goes is instantly a contender. He's not signing with a team that's not going to make the playoff. Well, I guess he's on a team that's not going to make the playoffs right now. But wherever Joe Burrow goes, in theory, he makes them a contender. He makes that team a contender. He changes the way they operate. And he's not picking top 5 in the draft or anything, regardless of where he signs. The expectations are all the same. Jamar Chase, I would like to think big teams would be the only ones offering him that much money. I think T. Higgins is in a range here where not only is he deciding between $2 or $3 million, he's also deciding between a potential chance to win a Super Bowl and to play for New England. I think if that's the conversation we're having, I think that does matter. And I'm not saying that he should pick the less money. I think money is important, and that's obviously a big factor in all these contracts. But I don't think he wants to be a Bengal as much as a lot of people want him to be a Bengal. I think he likes playing with Joe and Jamar. I think he likes competing for Super Bowls when we're able to do that. Obviously not the case this year, but I think that does mean something in the negotiations if you're going up against, say, a Carolina and a New England, and you can say, okay, here's 30 compared to their 33, but we're doing X, 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 and X in the offseason to fix this team. You're going to be a big part of this offense that was one of the best in the league last year. We're going to get back on track. We've made 2 AFC championships. We'll see what happens. I think the saving grace for the Bengals in this conversation would be if the other teams in the league value his injury history, but I just don't see that being the case. I think they're going to overlook it pretty much just from the start.
All right, well, we're out of time here on this. There's a couple more buy or sells that we could push to later in tomorrow's show. But good stuff today. Appreciate everyone tuning in, hanging out with us in the chat. Appreciate you guys. And that wraps it up for us on the radio side. Until tomorrow, this has been Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's a good video.
Yeah, so I saw this video yesterday. And this will be the cherry on top of the day, I guess. I don't know where this video was filmed. I don't really understand.
It was a card trading expo.
That's what it was?
Yeah, Brett Favre was signing cards.
So he was signing some cards.
He needs money, man.
Yeah, he needs... He
can't steal it anymore.
I think he sues people for saying that, so don't be careful.
Does he?
Be careful. I will say this.
Allegedly.
I saw
Allegedly.
I saw it yesterday. He got in an altercation with Mark Gastineau?
Oh, you don't know Mark Gastineau?
I don't really know Mark Gastineau.
One of the best defensive ends in NFL history.
So Mark Gastineau had the single-season sack record before Brett Favre famously took a dive for Michael Strahan. Michael Strahan then is now the single-season sack record. And basically, Favre goes over to him, tries to shake his hand, and this guy wants nothing to do with him. Nothing to do with Brett Favre. But I'll give my opinion after the video, but here's the clip.
I thought we met a long time ago. At least I saw you.
Right.
How you doing?
When you fell down for him. I'm going to get my sack back. I'm going to get my sack back, dude.
You probably would hurt me.
Well, I don't care. You hurt me. You hurt me. You hear me?
Yeah, I hear you.
You really hurt me. You hurt me, Brett.
We got to get back to this, Brett. I'm sorry.
Now you tell him.
He didn't look, respectfully, he does, I don't know how old Mark Gastineau is.
Mark Gastineau is kind of a face of the CTE, NFL brain damage.
68 years old.
Suing and all those lawsuits. He has Alzheimer's and Parkinson's, both that have developed from chronic brain injuries that happen from playing football. So he's kind of like the face of how that took place and how it's affected some of the great players in the game.
He didn't look good in the video. It sucks what happens to some of these NFL players, and it really sucks, especially and you kind of hear about it in the NBA too. Like Charles Barkley won't do NBA 2K because it's just like an insult to how much money those guys made 25, 35, 45 years ago. And this is clearly one of those things where I think if you were unable to capitalize on how good of a football player you were back then, because I don't know how much money he made, but it's definitely not probably what he was worth. And you get to this age, he's 68 years old, still signing cards at card shows. And the one really cool accomplishment he had was somewhat ruined by the fact that Brett Favre certainly took a nosedive for his friend.
He did, right? We're all on the same page.
He did, but at the same time, it looked like the offensive line didn't block on purpose. It looked like he ran around.
What I'm saying is that play was to get Michael Strahan a sack.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think so. But I feel bad. I feel bad for Gastineau. I feel very, very bad for him. I don't know. Obviously, I didn't know all the health concerns that he had, the health issues that he had. So it's probably a sad situation there. But man, it's wild that Brett Favre he just tanked. He just single-handedly gave Strahan that record. The play is crazy. The play is crazy. I think Casey's got it for us here. But
I mean, I don't know. I can't really blame him. I'm just going to play it for 2 seconds. And, I mean, I don't know. You take that as you will.
He was going to get lit up, I guess, if he stood there, I guess, theoretically.
Now, if my understanding, obviously this was well before I was watching football. I didn't watch the game live. If my understanding of this play and the conversation around it, it was at the end of the game or at the end of the half, and a kneel down would have just sent it to the half. And so the conversation was that he dropped back and knelt down back there to give the sack to Strahan instead of just taking the knee and running out the clock. Now, again, this was long before I was born. Not sure if that's entirely true, but that's always what I've heard. And every single clip doesn't have a scoreboard or anything on it. It's just the play, so I can't tell what actual time was left in the game. But that's the story I get told.
If you hear the broadcaster, too, right when that happens, I don't know who was calling the game, but whoever it is says, and it might have been Aikman, but that feels like a time that Aikman was playing, so that wouldn't have made sense. But either way, whoever was the broadcaster said, no one's happier for Strahan than Brett Favre. Like, and I can't tell if that was insinuating, like, hey, Brett Favre really wanted him to break that record. And it looks like, I mean, you could just say, hey, it's late in the game. Maybe the game's out of reach. I'm not going to take a hit from Strahan, and that's why he dropped. But it does look like he looked like he was dropping before Strahan was even getting in the tackling motion, as if even Strahan was expecting that to be the case. I do know this. That's a perfect example of something that happens in sports that if social media was around, that would have been blasted. I think that would have been absolutely destroyed. I forgot all about that. I hadn't even thought about that in forever. But knowing how people are on social media today, that would have just been absolute chaos, people reacting to that. A cheap way to get a record, because Strahan pops up and is in tears and celebrating. It's like, well, that's kind of weird. That's disrespectful to that record. That it's one thing if you earned it, but like you earned it to get to that point. But when a play was designed just for you to break it, I mean, hell, we got mad at there's players in the NBA. I remember when the year before LeBron went to the Cleveland Cavaliers, the Cavs were a joke, and Ricky Williams, he was a rebound away from a triple-double, and he was just dribbling out the clock. There's about 12 seconds. He had enough time, so he dribbles up to his bucket and just kind of throws it off the rim so he can get the ball back to get the triple-double. People eviscerated him because of how horrible that was, such a cheap way to get a triple-double. This guy sets the all-time sacks record or a season sack record, and it was fake. It was just set up prematurely. I don't know. I didn't like any of that. I think social media would have killed both those guys for that back in the
Brett Favre did have a statement yesterday, so I'll read some of this on Twitter. Back in 2002, when Michael Strahan sacked me at the end of the game that we had wrapped up, I was in no way trying to hurt Mark Gastineau. I was trying to close out a game and squeeze the last bit of fun out of a hard-fought game. I booted out of a run thinking it would be wide open, saw Strahan standing there and ducked down. The game was over.
Right.
There was no need for me to do anything spectacular. It probably wasn't Michael's best sack or tackle for loss. In a different game or situation, I would have made a bigger effort to avoid the sack or tackle for loss, but at no point was I thinking about hurting Gastineau. Maybe it crossed my mind to help Strahan. I didn't think it through. That wasn't my forte at the time. I just wanted to leave, I just wanted to have fun and compete. In retrospect, I understand how Gastineau feels. We played a brutal game. Gastineau played during an era where guys didn't make generational wealth. I see now how being the sack king would elevate his value at card shows, strengthen his case for the Hall of Fame, increase his demand as a public speaker. I had no way of knowing that then. I realize now that the potential financial implications, because football is far more business-oriented than when me or Mark played. There was no malice on my part. Mark was a great player. My understanding is he's a great guy and a fun teammate, a guy who played with the kind of joy and passion I tried to mimic. I understand his frustration, but I'm not his enemy. A while back, he saw me at a card show and got his frustration off his chest. It's not the kind of moment that should be filmed and released. It was a private moment of frustration between two old football warriors. I had a great deal of respect for Mark. I hope one day he joins me in the Hall of Fame. He earned it. Look at the numbers. He eclipsed 20 sacks twice and had 19 in another year. Mark definitely left an indelible mark on the game. I hope this controversy brings attention to just how great Mark Gastineau was. He belongs in Canton. Merry Christmas.
Yeah, he should be a Hall of Famer. Those statistics, that was ridiculously long. But those statistics are certainly there for Gastineau to be a Hall of Famer. He certainly deserves that. He should be in. I do think it's a little weird to use a video like this of a guy with pretty public health concerns not doing the best since his career ended as a promo for your 30 for 30. I think that's a little bit disgusting. This is a private video.
ESPN kept pushing it out.
Yeah, this is a video from 2023 from over a year ago that is just now being put out as a New York Sack Exchange, not Stock Exchange. 30 for 30 is coming out in the near future about Mark Gastineau and the pass rush and that Jets defense. Brett Favre has nothing to do with that. This is a story about that defense, not even about Gastineau and the sack record that was broken years and years after. Then to use a clip like this, clearly making Gastineau not look the best, and I'm sure many people don't know about the struggles that he's had since his playing days. So I personally, that was the first thing I thought of when I saw this, was to use a video like that for promo for your 30 for 30. That just rubbed me the wrong way.
Also, it is interesting to see Brett Favre when he actually feels bad about screwing somebody over. There was, leave it at that.
Careful, he sues. Yeah, put that allegedly, guys. Put that. He sues allegedly. People. He sues people.
Does he allegedly sue people? Huh? Does he allegedly sue people?
No, I think he actually sues them. Okay. But whatever he may or may not have stolen, we're going to put allegedly on that. Okay. We're going to put allegedly there.
There you go. Brett Favre, stand-up guy, though. Stand-up guy.
He stands up sometimes.
He does have the ability to stand.
He stands up.
He does have the ability to stand.
He was standing in that video.
He was. Yep. He was. He
After
certainly was.
Went down. Yeah.
Also had no idea how to spell Brett Favre. Googled Brett Favre.
Favre?
I didn't know that.
Favre?
Just didn't know that. So good for him.
Did you do FAR?
DY?
Yeah, it's weird. I don't think it's DY. Is it DY? Yeah, but it's I just know it's weird.
Or DWY? I don't know.
But well, that wraps it up for us. Anything to close out? We good?
No, Wayne Wade is DWY. Final thoughts.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Well, that's just a wild spelling.
Thought you said DWI. I got really nervous there. Got really nervous. All right. Until tomorrow, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers.
Adios.
Box later.